21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
A lot of high net worth investors dream of investing in companies like SpaceX or OpenAI, but private companies like these seem out of reach. Or you keep running into shady deals, offers that fall through, or just plain confusion. You may have looked at investing platforms or venture funds, but it all feels murky or unreliable, and there's no simple way to access just the companies you love the most. Well, I help accredited investors invest in private tech companies before they IPO the simple, personal way through what I call my pre-IPO concierge access service. So you can finally access pre-IPO opportunities the simple and clear way. I've spent almost 10 years now specialized in private transactions in tech unicorn companies like SpaceX, OpenAI, Stripe, Discord, Revolut, and many others, through various structures with a wide range of clients, from individuals to family offices and investment funds. I've spent time as a pre-IPO broker in both the US and Hong Kong. I also spent 3 years as the portfolio manager of a pre-IPO fund. So I've seen a bit of everything in this market, and I've struck out on my own, running my own business, Healey Pre-IPO, where I work hands-on with clients and get to spend the vast majority of my time on deal flow and helping my clients access the companies they want to invest in. Most high net worth individuals get started in private investing because there's a particular company or a small list of companies that they really find fascinating and are inspired by. So for a lot of people, that might be SpaceX or OpenAI, either companies like SpaceX that they see having these huge milestone moments in the news all the time, or perhaps OpenAI, whose product they use maybe every day with ChatGPT. So typically people start with a company and they think, well, I wish I could own that, but it's private. And so the only way you can invest in a company that's private is through a bespoke transaction on the private markets. So a lot of people hire a broker like me who specializes in pre-IPO to help them access that world and to find what they're looking for, to negotiate with sellers and to streamline that transaction, because it's very different from public market investing. So if you think about the public markets, if there's a stock you want to buy, whether it's Unity or Alphabet or what have you, you can go onto an exchange and type in a ticker, and it's very simple and centralized. But for private companies, there's no one exchange or place where you can go and find whatever you want and have comfort that it's it's reliable and it's uniform and you're going to get that deal you're looking for. So the market for pre-IPO deals is extremely fragmented. And like I say, there's no one place to find the deal you're looking for, that SpaceX or that OpenAI. So your perfect seller could be a family office in Malaysia, or it could be an employee seller out of California, or it could be any number of other folks that happen to have shares in the company you're looking for. And so if you're new to the market, it seems like an impossible task to know, where is my seller? How do I actually access the shares that I'm looking for? And so a broker's job is to basically open up their network of shareholders, funds, family offices, individuals to you, to find you offers in companies that you're interested in, to help you advocate for yourself in terms of negotiations, and help you navigate things like sizes, structures, fund structures and the specifics there, help you negotiate costs and fees with a fund manager you might get involved with, and to basically be your expert during that transaction to help make it smooth and clear and more streamlined for you. So, in an ideal world, I hope to provide my clients with multiple offers, ideally from different sources, and we can compare and understand these offers together. And then ultimately, it's the client's decision of what they want, if they want to move forward, and it's really at their discretion. But my role is to help find it, negotiate it, and streamline it for them. Many of my clients are high earning professionals in careers like tech or medicine or law or many others. And they do not work in the pre IPO market every day, but they see and engage with a lot of the stories and companies within the tech sector. So they are usually very savvy and very active investors in general, but they're new to pre-IPO. So they need a more sophisticated strategy through a broker than they would be able to get on their own starting out in pre-IPO. So that's very common. They know they want to get into pre-IPO. They know certain companies they want to buy, whether it's SpaceX or OpenAI. They just don't quite know how, and they want support when it comes to that. So that's a really common profile. Now, to invest in these private deals, the regulations require you to be accredited, which is a high income or high net worth level. So typically that's around 200K or more if you're single, the last 2 years, expectation of the same in the future, or $1 million in net worth outside of your primary residence. So it's a pretty large hurdle financially to get started in these deals. So it does tend to be that high net worth or ultra high net worth investor that's looking to diversify their portfolio, get involved in an asset class which is seen as a bit more high risk, high reward. So the upside on some of these companies can be potentially larger, but there's also risks. So these are not public companies, so you do deal with less liquidity than a stock on the public market. And as much as you see certain success stories, you also see huge failures. Like you see 23andMe, which was frequently traded on the private market several years ago and has now gone into bankruptcy or liquidation processes. You also see FTX, which was, I think, 30 or 40 billion in value and completely collapsed. So it's an industry where we see really exciting growth, and we also see real risk. So it's not for everybody. And investors can have their own strategy as to how to manage risk in this market. So is it investing in a larger number of names, or is it more of a flight to quality strategy where you're going to cut down your list of companies to a shorter list of companies where you have the highest conviction? So it's personal preference, but without a doubt, it's a high risk market. And it's a certain niche of investor that will really be drawn to the type of opportunities at play here. I started in the pre-IPO market in 2018. I had just left investment banking at Credit Suisse and Jefferies. I was entering this startup world in San Francisco, and I came across a really exciting startup, which at the time was called Equidate, which became Forge today, that was building a stock market for private companies. And the opportunity and excitement of that hit me immediately. So I joined that company and saw a bit of everything from the operations and product design to the actual sales and business development on these deals. And I saw a bit of everything, and I was so excited by it. I loved the type of clients I got to work with. And the industry just grew so rapidly, and I was able to grow up in that organization. So I went from an associate to a senior associate to a director to a senior director to co-leading the efforts in Hong Kong on cross-border and international expansion, and really saw all different areas of pre-IPO all the way from the operations to the APAC and cross border. So it was very, very exciting, and it was a great broad base of knowledge within pre-IPO deals. After that, I was recruited by the founder of that firm to help on their new project, which was a New York Stock Exchange listed pre-IPO fund. So it was quite a novel idea to be able to bring a portfolio of these pre-IPO companies to the public markets through a broad-based portfolio. So I was the portfolio manager of that public fund and head of private markets for 3 years. And it's at that point that I felt like we achieved so many milestones, and that entrepreneurial itch was still kind of speaking to me, and I left to start my own business and go back to working directly with clients every day. So that was around 9 months ago, where I've returned to what I did before, which is actually brokering these deals and working with clients. But I spent a good 3 years as a fund manager, which was really exciting. In my opinion, the attention and news cycles around these pre-IPO companies is at an all-time high. News cycles around the actual companies like SpaceX are more frequent than ever. These companies and these founders are more well-known than ever. And at the same time, there's more and more companies and agents and platforms popping up to try and democratize or to try and bring access to people to get these investments. But in my opinion, there's a real, it's a bit cheeky, but a proliferation of mediocrity, because there's so many brokers, so many supposed access points, but the people behind them are not particularly experienced, or they came to the market a year or two ago, or they lack the level of nuance or the breadth of network to do this type of work really well. So I think there's a more common experience than ever that people might see some sort of crowdfunding platform offering SpaceX or offering some private company, but it might seem shady to them. It might be unprofessional, or it might even seem good at first. They try and commit to the deal and move forward, and then the deal falls through last minute. So that's a very common experience where you have these false starts, and new investors to this market think they can just take these offers and opportunities at face value, but then they get let down. And there's a lot of confusion and frustration and time wasting. And that can lead people into this kind of analysis paralysis, where the types of stakes and minimums to get involved are sometimes high. It could be $100,000, $250,000, and you just don't feel comfortable putting forward that much money in a deal that you don't know you can rely on. So where my business comes in is, I think the platforms and the services out there lack a human touch. They feel unprofessional at times, or just a bit cold and impersonal other times. So my thesis is basically that there's a lot of people out there that don't want to be doing these big financial transactions on a impersonal online platform. They want to talk to a human. It's almost like an old school human approach to a market that is very new school. So my clients get to work with me one-on-one. I can explain to them in as much detail as they need the different structures and answer all their questions. And I'm there for them every step of the way, from the sourcing process and finding them a seller through to negotiating, and then the actual minutia of getting that investment signed for, wired, closed, etc. So it's basically like having a person who's experienced, who's seen a bit of everything in this market on your team to help you source and get these actual investments done. So I feel that's very different than the experience that a lot of other brokers are giving people in the market. And I think sometimes a personal experience is going to be really important in getting people to actually feel comfortable enough to move forward. So my edge is really that I'm ultra motivated, I'm detail oriented, and I care a lot about my clients. So I know they're my biggest asset. A lot of my business comes from referrals. And typically, once people work with me, they continue to work with me and they're a bit sticky. So that's what I love. And that's the experience I'm trying to keep consistent as a small business and try to, instead of trying to take over the market and be some big bank or conglomerate. My strategy is small and intentional and personal. Aside from what I do in the world of private markets, I have some quirky interests. I love stand-up comedy and I occasionally perform as well. And I've also traveled quite a bit and lived in different places. So I was raised in London until I was around 18 and then came to the US. I've lived in Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and then 2 years in Hong Kong and 1 year as a digital nomad. So international is really part of my DNA in a way, and it's always been top of mind, really, not just to serve U.S. U.S. clients or only work on U.S. deals, but also to keep in mind the unicorns of the world, the Revoluts and the Klarnas, or at a certain point in time, it was the Grabs and the Gojeks, or the ByteDances, even today. So I'm quite international minded and I love working with all kinds of clients throughout the world. You know, to this day, I spend a large amount of time in the Middle East, especially Abu Dhabi, Dubai, as well as London and Europe. That's just a part of me that I love to keep strong. And I think that differentiates me a little bit in the market too, because my clients, my clients get some of the best access in the US, which I have, but they also get those family offices, those funds, those other investors, and other sellers throughout the world. So, for example, I have a client in the Middle East that acts as both a buyer and a seller, and so that's a potential counterparty that my U.S. clients can access because I have those relationships and because I spend so much time in Abu Dhabi. So that type of thing, I think, gives me an edge when a lot of the pre-IPO agents in the US are so US centric and they don't realize that really the broader the network, the more likely it is that you're going to find the right counterparty or the best terms compared to what you would get if you had a very siloed search in just one geography. So that's really fun. I feel very strongly about pre-IPO investing and really how interesting and important it is. And the reason for that is that years ago, companies would IPO relatively early after several years in some cases. Today, that's not the case. Today, these large private tech companies are choosing to delay their IPOs and stay private, sometimes up to billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in valuation. And that's a phenomenon which is mind-blowing when you look at the companies of yesterday, which would go public at much, much smaller valuations. So if you think about it, and people don't always put two and two together, but if you have a company that is spending the majority of its life cycle up to potentially hundreds of billions of dollars in valuation entirely on the private market, all of that growth isn't being captured by normal public market investors. They're essentially shut out of a huge amount of growth in some of the most interesting companies of our generation in some cases. So in a world where in some cases billions or tens or hundreds of billions of dollars of value is only available on the private markets, all of that growth and value is only available to people like venture capitalists or individuals and funds that somehow get access to these private deals. And that's why it's so important, because in today's world, if you're only investing on the public market, you might get to a company very late in its life cycle, very, very late. And IPOs lately haven't been home runs every time. There's been a lot of volatility. There's been IPOs that have been quite disappointing. And it's really the early investors that may have got in at much, much lower valuations that are sitting pretty sometimes, while the public market investors have a much less positive result. So that's why I feel like this is really important work, because people deserve to have an ownership in some of these companies that are defining our future. These futuristic pioneering companies that are changing how we work, changing how we eat, in the case of Impossible Foods, changing how we travel, that are going to space. Access or owning a stake in these futuristic companies that are changing our world shouldn't just be reserved to people that are ultra rich, already ultra connected, or in venture capital. It should be everyone that gets to own a piece of some of these futuristic companies by investing in them on the private market. It shouldn't just be venture capitalists that get to benefit from innovative technology, and more people should get to invest financially in the companies that they believe in the most. If you want to find out more and have an introductory conversation with me, you can contact me on LinkedIn at Christine Healey, Healey. I also post a lot of informative content on there, or you can find me at my website, healeypreipo.com. On my website, you can sign up for my newsletter, where I share market insights about the pre-IPO world and sometimes share opportunities depending on suitability. So a lot of free information, and I'd love to speak with you and help you learn more.
"21st Century Entrepreneurship" with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.